Hi, welcome to CEO Talk, where we interview CEOs in the know and we ask them for their top tips and tricks for running their organizations. I'm Jason Netherton, and our business allows us to connect with important business leaders that have words of wisdom and share and help others along the path to success. Grab yourself a coffee and spend a few minutes with us this morning. This morning we have a special guest, Andrew Shorter from Calgary, Alberta. He's from Acuity. He began his career 3 decades ago and has a strong background in finance. He's a certified business intermediary in the merger acquisition space. Welcome, Andrew. Today, we're glad to have you.
Thanks, Jason. It's great to be here. Hope,
Great.
hope your weather is nice out there in Kelowna as it is in Calgary today.
Absolutely. It's not snowing in Calgary.
No, for a change. And the Flames were winning too. So
okay. Listen, let's get right into it. What does a professional business broker do? Tell the audience.
Yeah, that's a great question, Jason. It's a little bit of an anomaly that a lot of people don't really know. It's a little bit like a real estate agent, really bringing buyers and sellers together is the essence of the whole process. But in reality, there's a lot of financial analysis and due diligence that we do up front, both with the sellers of the businesses and with the buyers. So we go through a very in-depth process, and in terms of trying to determine what the value of the business is really the first stage in the process to make sure everyone's aligned and on the same page, and then we handle that, both the marketing, gathering all the information, the data, financials, and so on, working with the accountants, the business owners, accountants, lawyers, financial advisors in some cases, and other professionals to make sure that we can get the sale across the line, the transaction concluded in a timely fashion, where both the buyer and seller are happy at the end
Excellent.
of the day.
And that's basically the whole flow of the process. You handle it from A to Z, we call it.
Absolutely, Jason. Yeah, and that's obviously includes the marketing side of things as well. And through to the actual offers, handling the offers from purchasers, dealing with the lawyers again, and accountants and professionals, and
give us a description. Give us a description of your process. So what would be the first step with the business owner that's looking at transition, selling, or succession planning?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Jason. Yesterday we met with a client, and they are at a situation where they're kind of looking to retire or considering retiring. The business owner, without mentioning any names, is in his late 50s, so what we want to do is really establish up front: is the business ready to sell? Is probably the key thing. It's really the $1 million or multi-million-dollar question people ask is, if I want to sell my business today, or Jason wants to sell his business today, what's the realistic value? And not only is it the value, but what's the timing of the whole process? It might take 6 months, it might take 12 months, it might take 2 years in some cases or more, in order to conclude a transaction on a business divestiture. So there's quite a process involved, and a lot of business owners think they want to sell, or they're not quite sure. But a big part of that is actually preparing the business for sale. I think you use an analogy, Jason, like cutting the grass, mowing the lawns, cutting the grass, and painting the house if you're preparing your house for sale as well. Same kind of thing. Is every business is at a different stage. Some are more mature, some are early stage, some are more mature, been around a long time. It's very typical for an owner to be in a business for 30 plus years, or 25, 30 plus years. And that's most of their life, or a big part of their career. So it can be their baby as well. And sometimes they don't want to say goodbye to their baby. So the whole transition process is a key part of.
If we talked about the process, one of the pieces is the financials. And a lot of questions from the business owner is, what is my business worth? And if we looked at the foundational principles of evaluation, your first thing, you're going to dive into EBITDA. And if there's add backs or lifestyle expenditures run through the business, those need to be added back in. What can you sort of, give advice to business owners today when you're when you're doing your year end and you're trying to bury stuff in there and you're now hoping to sell, and there's that anomaly. So, maybe comment on that for them so they can hear from you.
Sure, Jason. Yeah, that absolutely hit the nail on the head there. It's something that's really common. We find, especially with the smaller micro-sized businesses, where there's maybe a husband and wife team in place, and a lot of the expenses are, the accountant's doing a really great job because they're minimizing the tax for for the business owner. But when it comes to that, really hiding a lot of expenses within the what we call one-off expenses or non-operational type expenses, where that's not necessarily something that the new owner is going to take on. If everything's run through the books, there might be a car that's being used personally by one of the it could be the spouse of the business owner, or there could be some travel on there, or lots of different things. Some retail businesses, there's not all the money's being put through the register, so to speak. So that can be a challenge as well. And so I think, you can save money on the tax side, but I think being able to what we call normalize or really realize what the real expenses are, through the books, is and that kind of comes down to shareholder, what we call shareholder discretionary earnings, and that was when you reference the EBITDA. EBITDA is a common figure with probably a slightly larger style of business, but when we're looking at the smaller, maybe less than $2 or $3 million or even $5 million businesses, then a lot of those we're adding back, like you say, adding back those expenses that make.
Imagine that they're trying to write stuff off here in Canada in order to get ahead. Imagine that.
Well, no one wants to pay CRA more than they have to as well.
So the other part is assets along with EBITDA. So maybe kind of go into that. If you got equipment, they're going to factor that into the equation. Are there any other little pieces that are going to be add to my valuation of a company that maybe I was selling or somebody else is selling?
Yeah, obviously equipment and the assets is a big part of it. And the two ways we tend to look at the values of the businesses, Jason, is one is on an asset value basis or a book value basis, and the other is based on the shares in the business, in the company. So there's two kinds of ways to look at the values of those businesses. Obviously, things like goodwill come into play. Goodwill can be a factor. If you've got inventory, obviously inventory needs to be taken into account, and working capital. Sometimes, deals can come unstuck when they haven't, working capital hasn't been allowed for or accounted for, which could be significant. Usually 3 to 4 months of operating capital is required to just to operate the business and pay the employees and all the rest of that stuff. So so there's a couple of different ways of looking at that. Within our process, we have it's a very systematic approach, where we have 3 different approaches, and eight without getting into too much detail today, and 8 methodologies. So it's somewhat scientific to try and determine.
How do you connect the buyers and sellers together? Like, what is the secret recipe there?
Yeah, that's again, that's a really great question, Jason. I think it depends. The market can change based on lots of different factors, and in the current market we're in, it's just a little bit like the real estate market across Canada now. It's quite a strong seller's market. So there's lots of buyers out there that are looking to buy businesses. Various different people that they may have been laid off in a job, or they've moved to Canada looking to a new Canadian looking to purchase a business. So there's a lot of screening that we do with the buyers up front, and really the first thing they have to do is to sign an NDA, non-disclosure agreement with us to and disclose their statement of position and their capacity and ability to be able to buy the business. There's a lot of folks out there that don't have, they want to buy a business, but you've got to have the finance and the capital in place and things like that.
So 2022 post-pandemic, you're seeing a lot of people wanting to buy businesses, or a lot of people wanting to sell their business, or is it equal?
Yeah, no, great question, Jason. And I say some businesses through the pandemic have gone up in value and some have gone down in value, depending on the industry type and so on. But right now, there's a strong demand for buyers to buy quality businesses. And we're finding there's not a lot of, some of the sellers are sitting back just waiting to see kind of what happens after COVID. And there's others that have maybe COVID's motivated them to be more to want to sell their business or to divest.
Well, yeah, like here personally, because we deal with 1,000 some odd business owners in BC, and here specifically in the Okanagan, with the Emergency Act invoked, there's a lot of guys that are business owners sitting there and going, you know what, I'm done with all the challenges now. I want to sail in the sunset. They built up a nice business. It's a time to reset, reflect. I think a lot of guys are thinking that. They got healthy businesses, but maybe a little worn out and saying, you know what, I want to make some changes. I've seen that a lot. So, and I think we talked about that before, just what the market's like right now. What advice do you have for business owners looking to sell or transition to retirement? A lot to cover there, but what do you, what advice do you have for them?
Yeah, I think the key and the main thing, Jason, really is get the business ready to sell. No different to your house. If you're not planning to sell your home or your house, then get it up, get things prepared and get things ready. Have a plan in place. You can't just go to the market and put the business on the market tomorrow and hope that you're going to sell it. There's a process and that needs to be in place, whether it's with your accounting team or your legal and accounting team and your professionals around you as a business owner to make sure that you can have the business in the best possible position to go to market. And that might take 12 months, it might take 18 months, it might take 2 years. You may not be quite ready to sell it today.
And so that's what we do here, because that's why we work together. We build out the strategic plan for each department and cover A to Z for each department, so you get maximum value for your business rather than leaving 20-30% on the table where a buyer comes in and says, you know what, you don't have all these management pieces in place or policies or governance in place. And you know what, that's going to be a lot of work for me. So no one's going to really want to offer you what you offer. So I'm going to give you a low ball offer. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the clients we were working with the other day, the business revolves all around him. Good business makes very good income, but if he's out of the equation or gets hit by the bus, like you said, then what?
No, so true, Jason. I think in a lot of the owners of the businesses, they get caught up in the day-to-day running of it, and they don't have a chance to stand back and look at things from maybe a 30,000 foot perspective and say, hey, what can I do differently? Or maybe what can I be a little bit more strategic about things? And you're right. If the business owner gets hit by the bus, God forbid, if the business owner gets hit by the bus today or tomorrow, what impact's that going to have on the cash flow of the business? Will the business be able to continue? Will the business be able to, is it sustainable? Is it all about the one person that's got those relationships with all the clients as well? So yeah, that's a really key point, Jason. I think and that ties in with the whole succession planning side of things too.
Yeah, and really implementing the 3 S's we call them, which is working with your employees and creating an employee program, because that's another issue. Finding people that are going to help you grow your business and be successful. So you got to get them on board. You got to paint the vision. So 3 S's. It's got to be self-motivated for them. Self-funded so that it works for you as the owner and the employee, and then sustainable. You talked about that. So how do you create a program? And that's what we're talking to this particular couple about, is how do you create a program for the employees and create a management and operation plan that'll be successful, so that you have the right people helping you grow, so that when you're ready to sell, it's turnkey. It's not based all on that owner. Because they're going to look at that as a buyer. If it's all on him, I don't know.
Absolutely.
The numbers go down for me.
Absolutely. And going back to the business, Jason, in the value side of things, if you're taken out of play today or tomorrow for whatever reason, or there can be health issues as well. Often some health issues can pop up, and things aren't expected. Talk about cancer, stroke, heart attack, all that sort of stuff. Guys our age, Jason, that's pretty common. So,
Hey, what are you talking about?
I
just lost 35 pounds.
maybe me more than you, perhaps. But things like that. There could be health issues or divorce or all kinds of different things can pop up, and that can distract the owner from the business as well. And that was something earlier that we didn't talk about so much. Some business owners will try and sell a business themselves, but it's a major distraction. They think, I can sell it. I know my competitor will maybe buy me out or something like that. And so they go and talk to them, but it's a huge distraction. Like, what impact's that going to have on the business? So I think having a plan in place and starting that succession plan and bringing in other people, key people to the organization that can help that process continue is really important.
Yeah, exactly. Well, before we wrap up, we'd like to ask you one more question. What do you consider to be the most important characteristic that every CEO should work on to improve themselves to benefit their operations?
Yeah, again, really great question, Jason.
Most important characteristic of a CEO, what should they work on?
Yeah, I think hiring and finding the right people to replace them, and taking themselves out of the business if possible. Having the right people is key. But if again, I go back to getting hit by the bus. If the business owner is not there today, tomorrow, what impact's that going to have? So I think putting yourself out of a job, Jason, like yourself, if you can replace yourself, then the business and hopefully can operate smoothly and efficiently without you. I think that's really important.
Yeah, they won't let me here.
you got to do your time and get right.
Well, hey, thank you, Andrew. It's been a real pleasure to have you on the show today. And we know we've learned a few things from talking to you. And, if you've liked what you've seen here today, please like and subscribe. You can reach out to Andrew or myself. Thank you for the audience for watching. If you found value in today's CEO Talk, be sure to, again, subscribe to the channel, and don't miss our next episode. We're trying to do these weekly. And then most importantly, share our content to anybody you know that would enjoy what we're doing here today. So Jason Netherton, CEO Talk, Andrew Shorter, we'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me, Jason.
You bet.
Thank you.